Good morning. Welcome to Capitol Hill Ocean Week 2020. I'm Kris, President and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. At the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, our mission is to inspire lifelong stewards for our oceans, coasts, and Great Lakes through on-the-water conservation, education and outreach, and research. We invite people with a stake in the health of our planet to work with us to protect it. Capitol Hill Ocean Week is an enormous undertaking of the foundation. Many people make it possible, including our sponsors, speakers, and hardworking staff, board members, and volunteers. A big thank you to all of them. We want to express our appreciation for our signature sponsor, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This year we are celebrating the agency's 50th anniversary. Congratulations, NOAA. NOAA is one of the world's premier science organizations, with a mission that spans from the surface of the sun to the floor of the ocean. We are grateful for the science, service, and stewardship they have provided over the past 5 decades, and look forward to innovation over the next 50 years. NOAA is a fantastic partner to us, and they have always been a champion of CHOW. Thank you all for your support year after year. We'd also like to acknowledge our presenting partners, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, whose support for scientific discovery, environmental conservation is helping to protect healthy and resilient ocean ecosystems, and the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, who focuses on addressing climate change, gaining knowledge through science, and ensuring a better future for the ocean. Lastly, I would like to thank our plenary sponsors, Nestle USA, the UN Foundation, and the Philip Stevenson Foundation for their generous support. This year, CHOW is focusing on another global crisis, the loss of biodiversity and its impacts on communities. Today, you will hear from speakers about the value of protecting biodiversity in our oceans and freshwater ecosystems and how to provide meaningful protection. You will learn how people, communities, government, and businesses are working to protect and restore ecosystems and species, and we'll discover how science and technology are expanding our knowledge and improving management. People need nature and the life it supports. With spring vacations canceled and summer vacations to our favorite beaches and lakes uncertain, I think we feel it more keenly this year as we stay at home to protect ourselves and our neighbors. Personally, I know I miss visiting our national marine sanctuaries where I get to dive under the water and look at fish and coral, or walk along the coastline and listen to the pounding of the surf, or just kayaking in the clear blue waters. What this makes me know is biodiversity is central to our well-being. Nature provides the clean air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the raw materials we use. Nature and biodiversity-related tourism drives economies in some areas. Biodiversity is central to our economic livelihood. Our oceans contain a great diversity of life. Scientists continue to discover new superpowers that marine wildlife have to fight disease. Conversely, changes in our environment can create conditions ripe for harmful algal blooms and the productions of toxins that are harmful to people unknowingly visiting a beach or consuming shellfish. By protecting and restoring our ocean ecosystems and the life within them, we may be able to stop pathogens or find new ways to protect ourselves against disease. Biodiversity is central to our health. Biodiversity is also part of the climate change solution. Healthy wetlands, mangroves contribute as carbon sinks that buffer the effects of climate change. And when we maintain these healthy ecosystems, we protect the biodiversity within them. And as you'll hear today, large animals such as whales also play a role in removing carbon from our atmosphere. They too rely on healthy marine ecosystems for habitat and prey. Protecting the biodiversity of oceans and Great Lakes, rebuilding a sustainable global economy that protects nature is critical for all of us, and each of us plays a role. With an accessible virtual format, Capitol Hill Ocean Week is an opportunity for people from across the U.S. and from across the globe to engage in a dialogue on actions we can take to conserve biodiversity for the long-term health of our communities and for the health of our planet. I invite you to join the conversation today, but more importantly, I encourage you to take action. This year, we are celebrating landmark events that helped protect U.S. waters. 20 years ago, the United States designated the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Coral Reef Ecosystem Reserve. In the words of then President Clinton, it set a new global standard for coral reef and wildlife protection. More commonly known today by its native Hawaiian name, Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, these protected waters continue to set a standard for ocean conservation. And just last month, we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the executive order calling for a national system of marine protected areas. In 2000, a group of scientists and conservationists came together and forged a common vision for a more connected and effective network of marine protected areas in U.S. waters. Their vision led to the creation of a National Marine Protected Area Center that has helped strengthen and expand our systems of protected waters. The National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is also celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, and we're proud to support the vision of the executive order and the National MPA Center. This year, we are proud that we are working with the Lenfest Ocean Program to launch Marine Biodiversity Dialogues, an effort funded by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation to assess where and to what extent we here in the U.S. are protecting marine biodiversity from our near shore to the borders of our exclusive economic zone. With this framework, we hope that decision makers, natural resource managers, stakeholders at local, regional, national levels can match biodiversity goals to ocean protection efforts, targeting the highest areas for protection. It will help them define approaches to managing marine ecosystems in ways that provide necessary protection to both sustain biodiversity while protecting marine areas for ocean, human, and species health. With a jurisdiction almost 4.5 million square miles of ocean, an area 23% larger than our nation's landmass, the U.S. plays a critical role in protecting our ocean, our global ocean. These waters span a multitude of ecosystems, from the icy cold gray waters of the Arctic to the warm tropical blue waters of the Caribbean Sea. One way we can make a difference is to protect more ocean and freshwater ecosystems in the United States by designating new national marine sanctuaries and marine national monuments in areas that represent different marine and freshwater ecosystems, expanding existing ones, and strengthening protections for biodiversity. We can do our part in the global effort to conserve nature and maintain a healthy ocean and ecosystems. We're all stewards of our oceans and Great Lakes for the species that depend on them and for our future generations. We are intertwined. We rely on healthy, biodiverse waters for our health, our well-being, and our livelihood. And our oceans and Great Lakes rely on us to be their voices in the halls of Congress, state legislators, city halls, and corporate boardrooms, advocating for greater protection and sustainable business practices that help them thrive for future generations. Please enjoy Chow.
Hello everyone, Senator Tom Udall here. I'm so glad to help you kick off Capitol Hill Ocean Week. The National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is doing critical work to protect our oceans and lakes. Thank you for all that you do. You might be wondering why a senator from the landlocked state of New Mexico is concerned with preserving marine life. Well, it's because humans and nature are deeply interconnected. Humans everywhere rely on ocean ecosystems for our way of life. Along the coast, many people make their living from the ocean through fishing or tourism. For those of us who don't live on the water, marine ecosystems still provide us with food and other benefits. They are the world's largest carbon sink. Here in the United States, about 1/4 of U.S. waters are protected in some way. Even though that sounds like a lot, most of those protected areas are very remote, and a majority of coastal areas remain unprotected. The science tells us that we must protect 30% of the Earth's lands and waters by 2030, with a long-term goal of 50% by 2050. More and more nations are taking up this call. The United States should be a leader in this effort. That's why I've introduced the 30 by 30 resolution to save nature in the Senate. I'm so glad that Congresswoman Deb Haaland is leading this effort in the House. We also must address the plastic pollution crisis facing our planet. Images of plastic engulfing wildlife are everywhere. Beached whales with pounds of plastic in their bellies, birds, turtles, and fish helplessly trapped in plastic waste. We can and must break free from plastic. I introduced the first bill in the Congress that tackles this crisis and takes it head on. It's called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. Plastic pollution is killing marine wildlife in devastating numbers. At the rate we're going, by 2050, there will be more plastic waste in the oceans than fish. This isn't just a problem for nature, it's a problem for humanity. Communities around the world are threatened by this pollution. They rely on healthy oceans and ecosystems for survival. There's no doubt that we face major challenges, but I have great hope for our country and our planet. We have the power to be bold, to save our planet, to save ourselves. Thank you for all the great work that you do. Let's keep up the fight together.
Thank you for inviting me and my good friend, Senator Tom Udall, to give opening remarks for Capitol Hill Ocean Week. I'm a 35th generation New Mexican who lives in the high desert, which isn't the first place that comes to mind when you're talking about oceans. But millennia ago, New Mexico was a shallow marine environment. If you go to certain parts of our state, you can still find clamshell fossils and other remnants of the ocean in our deserts. I also have a deep respect for Mother Earth and our environment, and I know that water is a precious resource. It saddens me to think of the damage we're doing to the oceans and sea life by allowing plastic waste to get into our waterways and spewing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. When I was growing up, my dad would take me and my siblings out into nature every chance he got. There was one time we drove up to Jemez, which is a small community in the mountains in New Mexico, and my brothers and sisters and I walked in the icy river over boulders and against the current. It's those many memories that I want all families to create for themselves, and that's why I believe so strongly in protecting our environment, and why I'm proud to be the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation's ally in Congress. And I'm an ally in every way. I pick up trash everywhere I go because I know that trash in the Rio Grande eventually ends up in the ocean. And I support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution bill introduced by Senator Udall and Chairman Alan Lowenthal. Our communities deserve fresh air to breathe, clean water to drink, and a livable planet. But right now, inaction on climate change puts everything at risk, particularly in communities who can least afford to adapt. Globally, the loss of nature accelerated by climate change is putting up to 1 million species on the path to extinction. That's why U.S. Senator Tom Udall and I followed the direction from leading scientists and introduced a resolution that sets a national goal of conserving 30% of America's land and oceans by 2030 to tackle this urgent crisis, and why Senator Cory Booker and I introduced the Climate Stewardship Act to protect our coastal wetlands, which will sequester up to 5 times more carbon than terrestrial forests and reduce coastal flooding on sea level rise. I give a heartfelt thank you for everything you do to protect our communities, our planet, and our ecosystems that hang in the balance. It's my hope that Capitol Ocean Week will raise awareness and forge a path to action for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for having me during this first ever virtual chow. Special thanks to Kris, Sarri, and the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. While we can't be together in person, I'm looking forward to a fantastic day of virtual learning and discussion. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Neil. I'm often thought of as the dry side weather guy, but that's not the case. I grew up in Miami and later moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and then the Outer Banks. My life outside of NOAA revolves around surfing and fishing. I got into numerical weather prediction because I needed to know when the waves were going to be good. When I'm not chasing swell, I can be found fly fishing anywhere from the mangroves to the Everglades backcountry in South Florida to the marshes along the Carolina coast. I'm extremely passionate about the marine ecosystem, from conservation of recreational species like redfish, tarpon, and bonefish to combating marine debris and polluted runoff. I've worked in both the commercial tuna fishery as well as a rec guide. I've actually spent my COVID isolation time tying flies for my next trip to Miami to visit NOAA facilities and, of course, the sanctuary down in the Keys. So while my academic expertise is numerical weather prediction, my personal life and real-world experience is all linked to the ocean. Today, I wanted to share just a few of the many exciting updates from our agency. NOAA is proud to work with many of our partners to protect biodiversity of our oceans. One of the key ways we do this is through the National Marine Sanctuary System. On May 1st, NOAA announced a proposed rule to expand Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary in the Gulf of Mexico to further conserve these irreplaceable ecosystems. The proposal would protect 14 additional reefs and banks that provide habitat for recreational and commercially important fish species, as well as threatened endangered species of sea turtles and coral. I invite you to submit public comments through July 3rd. Looking ahead, we also hope to expand our nation's first national marine sanctuary, which protects the wreck of the USS Monitor, a Civil War ironclad. It was designated in 1975 off the coast of the Outer Banks of North Carolina. In addition to celebrating our nation's maritime heritage, this expansion would also promote acts of valor and sacrifice during one of the most pivotal moments of our nation's history. Protecting the shipwrecks would also mean protecting important habitat for diversity of marine species. Building on the successful designation of Mallows Bay Potomac River Sanctuary last year, we're also working alongside our partners in the states of Wisconsin and New York to designate 2 additional proposed sanctuaries in the Great Lakes. Wisconsin's Shipwreck Coast and Lake Ontario sanctuaries would both protect and celebrate the nation's maritime cultural heritage while creating unique research, educational, recreational, and tourism opportunities. Ultimately, we cannot protect what we don't know is there. Ocean mapping, exploration, and characterization are fundamental to the ability to protect biodiversity. That's why NOAA is investing heavily in ocean mapping exploration. We are proud to be one of the lead agencies executing the President's Memorandum on Ocean Mapping and Exploration, signed last November. I encourage you to tune in this afternoon to the 4 p.m. panel moderated by Admiral Gallaudet, Deputy NOAA Administrator, to hear more about this important work. In addition to understanding what lies beneath the waves, we also need to understand the value of our oceans, coasts, and the many communities and industries that rely on these natural resources. That is why on June 2nd, NOAA and the Bureau of Economic Analysis released prototype data under the Ocean Economy Satellite Account, the most comprehensive sector-by-sector measurement of the ocean economy to date. These data represent an important new baseline for measuring the blue economy, offering precise estimates by sector and industry for all ocean, coastal, and Great Lake-related economic activity. Fisheries, whether for commerce or recreation, play an enormous role in the U.S. economy and global biodiversity. We are already among the world's largest producer of safe, healthy seafood, with some of the most valuable, well-managed wild capture fisheries in the world. But we can and should do more to realize our full potential. That's why last month, the President signed a new executive order promoting American seafood competitiveness and economic growth to propel the United States towards a seafood superpower. The executive order will expand sustainable U.S. seafood production through regulatory reform to maximize commercial fishing, more efficient and predictable aquaculture permitting, and fair market access to U.S. seafood products. This EO balances protecting our aquatic environments and revitalizing our nation's seafood industry. If you'd like a deeper dive on NOAA's work, I encourage you all to tune in for sessions led by other agency leaders coming today during the Ocean Exploration, Restoring Our Waters, Transformative Technologies, and Global Action for Ocean Climate and Biodiversity panels. It's been a pleasure to share some of these updates from America's Ocean Agency. There are many more to come. Mahalo.
Hi, everyone. It is my great pleasure to open CHOW 2020 and extend our gratitude to Kris Sarri and the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation team for convening the first ever virtual CHOW. This year, our Ocean and Great Lakes focus is squarely on biodiversity because of the central role it plays in our future. Today, I want to begin with a story about the history of people's narratives about the ocean. I focus on narratives because I believe they frame our thinking and reflect our values. Indeed, narratives can blind and constrain us, or they can inspire and liberate us. For most of human history and well into the 20th century, the late 20th century, the narrative about the ocean assumed that because the ocean was so huge, it didn't really matter what we took out or what we put into the ocean. The ocean was simply too big to fail. Make no mistake, this narrative persists today as many nations faced with depleted resources turn to the ocean for food, for other resources, and for jobs. But the folly of this endless bounty narrative has become painfully obvious to anyone paying attention. Some assert that the situation is hopeless. And indeed, doom and gloom pervade this narrative. The situation appears impossibly complex, the drivers too ingrained, the vested interests too powerful, and the available options too limited. Projections are frightening, and pressures on the ocean are escalating. A second narrative has thus gained traction. The ocean is now deemed too big to fix. But despite the magnitude of the very real challenges, hope is rising like a phoenix from the ashes. People in diverse parts of the world are delivering real solutions to diverse problems. As a result, a third narrative is just beginning to emerge, one that says, hey, maybe we've been looking at these problems in the wrong way. What if a healthy ocean was the key to addressing climate change, food security, poverty, or economic recovery? For example, we are just beginning to appreciate how central the ocean is to both mitigation and adaptation to climate change. A report commissioned by the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy quantified the potential mitigation options from the ocean. It concluded that ocean-based mitigation options might total as much as 21% of the emission reductions that are needed to achieve the 1.5 degree target by 2050. Now, that's a solution worth scaling. In a similar fashion, new calculations from another high-level panel report suggest that if both fisheries and aquaculture were smartly managed, they could hold the key to food security. So there's a second solution, ripe for scaling. And a third scalable solution is much more ambitious use of fully and highly protected MPAs. Healthy, productive, resilient ocean ecosystems are absolutely essential to a vibrant future for life in the ocean and for people. And this is precisely why fully and highly protected MPAs are so important. We know that fully protected MPAs provide a broad suite of important benefits, such as those seen here. For this reason, I'm delighted that Chao is shining a spotlight on the overarching importance of MPAs as the primary tool to protect and restore biodiversity and ecosystem functioning. In addition to the myriad other benefits of fully protected MPAs, one that I particularly treasure is the glorious opportunity to be immersed in nature, to revel in the awe of life in the ocean, and to learn from life. In summary, the unprecedented threats to our ocean and our future are all too real, but not insurmountable. We have solutions in hand, and timely opportunities to bring them to scale. A new narrative for the ocean rests squarely on our willingness to embrace these solutions and bring them to fruition. And so, at the beginning of this CHOW 2020, I offer a new hopeful narrative for the ocean. Now, a new narrative does not automatically change the status quo, but it can alter our sense of what's possible, create space for new ideas and solutions. It can liberate ingenuity and reset expectations of what could be, not what is. This new narrative concludes that the ocean is not too big to fail, nor is it too big to fix, but it is too big and too central to ignore. Thank you.